Mourning the loss of their son and demanding answers after he died during a 4th of July celebration.
One fact decides almost every jurisdictional question in this case, and it has nothing to do with what happened on the water. Horn Island is federal land. That is why the FBI is already assisting with digital evidence per WLOX. It is also why the push for a Justice Department review has focused on the island's federal status, per Newsweek. And it is why two agencies can both be correct when they describe their own role differently. This video takes the ground itself as the subject, where the county's authority ends, where the federal government's begins, and what that means for a case with no charges in it. The boat's own movement gives us the first hard number in this case. State marine data, obtained by CBS News, puts that boat clear of Horn Island at about 4:31 on the afternoon of July 4th. That is the official record. The Jackson County Sheriff's Office runs the death investigation. Sheriff John Ledbetter has said, per WLOX, that his office has interviewed more than 60 witnesses. 60. That is not a small number. That is a full accounting of a day, a boat, and a stretch of water. Because the island is federal ground, the Bureau is helping on the digital side. Assisting is not investigating, and that distinction matters more as this case moves forward. The county's jurisdiction stops at the waterline. The federal government's begins at the shoreline. The ground itself decides who gets to ask the next question. So what does the official account actually contain? Here is the shape of it. Nolan Wells, 18 years old, took a July 4th boat trip to Horn Island, Mississippi. The disappearance was reported. His body was recovered in the water off the northwest end of the island on July 6th, per CNN and WLOX. The recovery came 2 days after the trip, 2 days after 4:31. The three friends who were on that boat have been interviewed. Sheriff Ledbetter confirmed to WLOX. They have been interviewed, not charged. Not one person has been charged over howhedied.com. Two sets of investigators still have this open, per NOLA.com. Here is the part that keeps the timeline honest. Independent confirmation of where he was covers a band from 3:23 to 4:27 and nothing past it. That is from the United Cajun Navy report, a volunteer organization's document and not an official finding, per TMZ. 3:23 to 4:27 is a 64-minute span. The boat cleared the island at 4:31. 4 minutes after that window closes, the boat is moving away from Horn Island. That is the account as the official record has it. It is clean, it is specific, it is also incomplete, and the people running this case have said so out loud. They framed it as a working problem, not a public relations one. Mississippi Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tyndall went further. A lab document doing the rounds online was not genuine, and the state said so through its public safety department, per WellBT. A document that looks like evidence, branded false by the state's own public safety commissioner. The official account has been challenged from another direction too. The family commissioned its own independent autopsy, per ABC News and CNN. The finding read cause and manner of death undetermined pending investigation. The state wrapped its examination on 31 July, per BLBT. Its results have not been made public, and they are going to a grand jury. So here is where the official account stops being simple. The boat left at 4:31. The last verified sighting ended at 4:27. The body was recovered 2 days later. 60 witnesses have been interviewed. The FBI is assisting because of the ground itself. Not one person has been charged over how he died. And the push for a Justice Department review has put that ground in a different kind of focus. Because the Congressional Black Caucus asked the Attorney General and the FBI Director whether a separate federal investigation is warranted, per ABC News, August 13th. Not whether the county investigation is failing, whether the federal government should be running one of its own. That question has an answer, and the answer depends on a single word in the legal description of Horn Island: federal. But before we get to what that word unlocks, there is another account still on the table, the one that comes from the people who were on that boat, through the threats they are now reporting, the cease and desist letter one friend's attorney has sent, and a recording that Mississippi officials have publicly called doctored. That account, and the fight over it, is where this case gets loud. The second account belongs to 3 young men the record never needs to name. They are the 3 friends who were on the boat. Interviewed by the sheriff's office, per Sheriff John Ledbetter via WLOX. not arrested, not charged, not named as suspects, interviewed, the same verb the sheriff used for all 60-plus witnesses in this case. Here is what that account contains. First, they were there. All three of them, on the water with Nolan Wells on the 4th of July, part of a day trip that ended with an 18-year-old in the water, and his body recovered 2 days later, per CNN and WLOX. They have never denied being there. Second, they have talked. The sheriff said his office has interviewed more than 60 witnesses, and the three friends are among them, per WLOX. Their version of events has been on the record since mid-July, per the sheriff's own statements. Third, that account has come at a cost. The friends have reported death threats and online harassment, according to WWL, The Grio, and ABC News. One friend's attorney has sent a cease and desist letter. Not a question of tone. The threat traffic got serious enough that the Bureau took it up. Threats against the young men from that afternoon, and against officials on the file, per Live Now from Fox. Read that fact slowly. The FBI is assisting the Jackson County Sheriff's Office with digital evidence because Horn Island sits on federal land, per WLOX, and the FBI is also investigating threats against the three friends. Same federal agency, same case, two jobs at once. Building a digital picture of what happened on that boat and protecting the people who were on it from the public's response. That second job exists for a reason. Via Newsweek, the state urged people to leave the conclusions alone for now. Not a hypothetical warning, a live one. A purported toxicology report circulated online, and Commissioner Sean Tyndall called it fraudulent, per the Mississippi Department of Public Safety via Waltoini Bowis. A document that looked official, publicly branded false by the state's own public safety commissioner. So the three friends have watched their account get picked apart in real time. They have watched a volunteer organization's report get treated as gospel by some and dismissed by others. They have watched their friend's family push for a federal investigation that could examine their every move that day. And they have sat for interviews, not through a lawyer's statement, at least not publicly. In person, with the sheriff's office, answering for a day they cannot undo. The sheriff's own words frame it. He said the FBI is assisting with digital evidence because of the ground, not because of a feud between agencies, per WLOX. He said the three friends have been interviewed. He did not say they are suspects. He did not say they are cleared. He said they are witnesses. In the law's eyes, that distinction is everything. But here is the uncomfortable part. When the FBI investigates threats against witnesses, it is not taking the boys' side. It is protecting its own case. A witness harassed into silence is a witness who cannot testify. And the federal government needs those three accounts intact, because those three accounts are the only ones from that boat. Not one person has been charged over how he died.com. Two sets of investigators still have this open, per NOLA.com, and three young men are living inside a paradox. The same federal interest that made their island federal is the interest now protecting them from the fallout. Two investigations, one federal agency, and the ground itself deciding which one matters more. So where does that leave the account from the boat? One friend's attorney says the harassment is false and defamatory. The sheriff says the friends have been interviewed, and the FBI is looking at threats against them, not at them. Three young men, one day on the water, and a legal machine built to do two things at once. Find out what happened to Nolan Wells, and make sure the three people who know the most are still alive to tell it. That is account 2, in full, and it collides with account 1 not on the water. But in a federal statute about land, two timelines, running side by side, and they do not touch. The first one belongs to the boat. State marine data, obtained by CBS News, puts the boat clear of the island at approximately 4:31 p.m. on July 4th. That is the moment it left, not the moment Nolan was seen, the moment the boat departed. The second one belongs to the ground. Horn Island sits on federal land. The FBI is assisting with digital evidence because of that ground, per WLOX, not because of a tip, not because of a suspect, because of the dirt itself. Count the minutes between them. The last independently verified sighting of Nolan Wells came between 3:23 and 4:27 that afternoon, per the United Cajun Navy report via TMZ. A volunteer organization's document, not an official finding. But the numbers are the numbers, 3:23, 4:27, 4:31. The sighting window closes at 4:27. The boat clears the island at 4:31. 4 minutes between the last verified moment and the point where the boat is gone. 4 minutes, and then the federal interest in the ground begins to pull the case in a different direction. Now count the days. July 4th, the trip. July 6th, the recovery. Nolan Wells' body was found in the water off the northwest end of the island, per CNN and WLOX. 2 days between the last sighting and the recovery. 2 days, and the ground is still federal the whole time. The county's own interview tally has gone past 60, per WLOX. 60. That is not a small number. That is a case where the investigators are not sitting still. Because the island is federal ground, the Bureau is helping on the digital side. Here is where the timelines start to press against each other. The state wrapped its examination on 31 July, per WLBT. Its results have not been made public. They are going to a grand jury. That is the state track, moving forward on its own clock. But the family commissioned its own independent autopsy, per ABC News and CNN. That one came back with a cause and manner of death of undetermined pending investigation. Undetermined, pending investigation. 2 words that keep the door open. And on August 13th, the Congressional Black Caucus asked the Attorney General and the FBI Director whether a separate federal investigation is warranted, per ABC News. Not announced. Asked. A question, formally posed, about whether the federal ground requires a federal case. So now you have the collision, point by point. Point 1. The boat left at 4:31. The sighting window closed at 4:27. The state's timeline ends at the water's edge. Point 2. The body was recovered off the northwest end of the island on July 6th, per CNN and WLOX. The island is federal, the water around it. That is where jurisdiction gets complicated. Point 3. The state autopsy is complete and going to a grand jury, per WLBT. The family's autopsy says, undetermined pending investigation, per ABC News and CNN. 2 autopsies, 2 different conclusions. 1 body. Point 4. The FBI is assisting with digital evidence because of the ground, per 4 WLOX. Assisting, not leading. The sheriff's office is running the death investigation. The FBI is helping with the phones, the data, the ones and zeros that do not care about state lines. And point 5, no one has been charged, per CNN, NPR, and NOLA.com. 2 sets of investigators still have this open, per NOLA.com. 2 agencies, 1 ground, 0 charges. That is the shape of it. The boat's timeline says 4:31. The sighting window says 4:27. The ground says federal. The grand jury says it is not done yet. And the FBI is in the room because of the land, not because of the boat. 64 minutes between 3:23 and 4:27. 4 minutes between 4:27 and 4:31. 2 days between the last sighting and the recovery. 60 witnesses. 2 autopsies. 1 grand jury. Every number in this case is a seam, and every seam is where the 2 timelines could tear open. The state needs to know what happened on that boat. The federal government needs to know what happened on that ground. They are not the same question, but they share one witness list, and those witnesses have been threatened. Live Now from Fox reported the Bureau taking up threats made against those who were with him, threats against witnesses, threats against the people who would testify. So the federal presence is not just about the dirt anymore. It is about keeping the witnesses alive long enough to talk, and that changes the collision, because now the ground is not the only thing pulling the FBI in. The threats are doing it too, but the threats did not come from nowhere. Someone is frightened, someone is angry, and someone is watching exactly how these 2 timelines resolve. But that is where the record starts to separate from the noise. What we can actually verify, independently, on the record, is narrower than what the internet has decided. Start with the ground truth. The GPS data comes from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, per CBS News. It places the boat clear of the island at approximately 4:31 on July 4th. That is not a witness memory. That is a satellite fix. The boat left Horn Island at 4:31. That is the state's own data. Now the sighting. The United Cajun Navy is a volunteer search organization, not law enforcement, per TMZ. Their report places the last independently verified sighting of Nolan Wells between 3:23 and 4:27 that afternoon. 64 minutes. And the boat's departure, per the state data, came 4 minutes after that window closed. So here is what the record supports. A sighting window that ends at 4:27 and a boat departure at 4:31. The gap is 4 minutes. The question is not whether Nolan was on that boat. The question is what happened in that 4-minute seam. And then, in the 2 days before his body was recovered off the northwest end of the island on July 6th, per CNN and WLOX, Sheriff John Ledbetter has put numbers on the record, per seam. More than 60 witnesses interviewed, the 3 friends who were on the boat interviewed, the FBI assisting with digital evidence. That is what the sheriff's office will say publicly. That is the weight of the record so far. But the record also has a silence at its center. The state wrapped its examination on 31 July, per Frame July. Its results have not been made public. They are going to a grand jury. Their examination returned undetermined pending investigation and nothing more, per ABC News. 2 examinations, 2 different conclusions, 1 body. And the public has been told exactly one official thing about the toxicology, that the purported report circulating online is fraudulent, per Mississippi Public Safety Commissioner Sean Tindell via WellBT. That is a weight-bearing statement. A state commissioner went on the record to call a circulating document fake. That does not tell us what the real toxicology says. It tells us the state believes the fake one is dangerous. And that is a choice, to correct the lie without releasing the truth. Think about what that means for you, watching from the outside. Every document you have seen has been either partial, contested, or fake. The state autopsy, sealed. The independent autopsy, undetermined. The toxicology report, fraudulent. What is left is the GPS data, the sighting window, the witness count, and the threats. That is the entire public record. Then there is the formal question. The Congressional Black Caucus has asked the Attorney General and the FBI Director whether a separate federal investigation is warranted, per ABC News. That is not a rumor. That is a written question from elected members of Congress. And the push for a Justice Department review, per Newsweek, has put Horn Island's federal status in focus, because the ground itself is the reason the FBI is in the room at all, per WLOX. So the record supports this much. The boat left at 4:31. The last verified sighting closed at 4:27. The body came back on July 6th. 60-plus witnesses have been interviewed. Not one person has been charged over howhedied.com. The state autopsy is sealed from the public. The independent autopsy is undetermined. The toxicology report on social media is fake, and the FBI is investigating threats against the witnesses and the officials, per Live Now from Fox. Now here is what the record does not support. It does not support naming anyone. The friends are witnesses. They have been interviewed, per the sheriff's office. They say threats and harassment have kept arriving since this went national, per the GRIO and WWL. A written legal demand has gone out on behalf of one of them, per ABC News. None of that is evidence of guilt. All of it is evidence of pressure. And that pressure is the point. The threats are real enough that the FBI is investigating them. The state's public request, via Newsweek, was that nobody settle this in advance. They framed it as a working problem, not a public relations one. So the record is not empty. It is loaded, with data, with statements, with formal questions, with silences. And the silence at the center is the state autopsy. We know it exists. We know it is complete. We know it is going to a grand jury. We do not know what it says. And that is the seam the next beat has to walk. Because the grand jury will see what we have not. The question is whether the record they see, the full record, matches the one we have been given piece by piece. So here is what is actually still open. The state autopsy is complete, per WellBT. But you have not read it, and neither have we. It was finished by July 31st, and its results have not been made public. The next stop is a grand jury. That is not a rumor. That is the official route, and it is a door we cannot see through. The second open question is federal. A letter dated the 13th of August put the question of a separate federal case to 2 offices that could open one, per ABC News. The record before us does not include an answer. The push for a Justice Department review, per Newsweek, has put Horn Island's federal status in focus. And that focus exists because of the ground. Horn Island is federal land, per WLOX. And that fact is what gives the FBI a lane into this case. The FBI is assisting the Jackson County Sheriff's Office with digital evidence, per WLOX. Assisting is not the same as taking over. More than 60 people have been interviewed by the county, per the sheriff. The FBI is helping with the digital side. Different jobs, same case. There is also a third lane. Live Now from Fox reported the Bureau taking up threats made against those who were with him. The targets are the witnesses and the officials. The Friends have reported death threats and online harassment, per WWL and the GRIO, and one Friend's attorney has sent a cease and desist letter, per ABC News. Each of the three who were on the water has given an interview. None of that makes anyone a suspect. Not one person has been charged over how he died. Now, add the timeline to the pending pile. The last independently verified sighting of Nolan fell somewhere between 3:23 and 4:27, per the United Cajun Navy report via TMZ, a volunteer organization's document and not an official finding. The departure sits at roughly 4:31 on state marine data obtained by CBS News, that is 4 minutes at the closest and 68 minutes at the furthest. The body was recovered off the northwest end of the island on July 6th, per CNN and WLOX. Those are the endpoints. Everything between them is what the grand jury will have to look at. Now bring it back to a human being. Nolan Wells was 18 years old when he left for Horn Island on the 4th of July, per CNN and WLOX. Horn Island is reachable only by boat, per NBC News. His mother is Christine Wansley. Their examination returned undetermined pending investigation, and nothing more, per ABC News. That phrase is honest about its own limits. The examiners could not establish a cause, not yet. Meanwhile, a purported toxicology report circulated on social media, and the state's public safety commissioner, Sean Tyndall, said it was fraudulent, per WellBT. The state's public request via Newsweek was that nobody settle this in advance. Every official statement says the same thing: wait for the record. But the record so far has been unreleased, undetermined, or fake. The state autopsy is unreleased. The independent autopsy is undetermined. The toxicology report is fraudulent. That leaves a mother waiting on a grand jury to see the one document that could speak clearly. She is the reason the ground matters. The island's federal status is not a technicality to her. It is the door that brought the FBI into her son's case, per WLOX. It is the reason a written question went to Washington, per ABC News. And it is the reason the next update in this case will not begin with a new document. It will begin with her, waiting for someone to explain what happened to her son.